to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with the people who matter. And sometimes I wonder what I was thinking when I created this podcast and this platform back in 2020, because sometimes it would be so much easier to not be real, to not take on what I pledged when I said I really wanted to work on being radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. Because that means that, at least for me, it means that my word is very important to me and that I will do what I say I will do. To me, that's the definition of integrity. And sometimes it would be easier to not go first. It would be easier to just go with the flow, go with the crowd, to not hold a space that is or can be unpopular. And that's what I'm noticing these days when we have so many things that we probably would do best to create dialogue around, and yet it doesn't feel safe. And when we don't feel safe to have conversations about things that matter, what do we do? What do we do with that information? What do we do with what's going on in our own heads? And so I want to be able to provide that safe space for people who are committed to dialogue. And the way I define that is being willing to suspend previous assumptions in order to learn from and with each other. And that means me too. So that's why I love dialogue so much, because I am a learner and I am always interested in knowing what I can do better, how I can not perfect, get better at, let's say, master some of these skills that we've called soft skills in the past, but I really see them as essential skills. Things like listening, giving and receiving feedback, having the hard conversations, being accountable to what you say. That's how I define integrity, doing what you say you will do, even when it's difficult. And all of that has been on my mind, the past couple of weeks for sure. And the things that we're not supposed to talk about in public, religion and politics, have been all over my heart and mind for these last few weeks, and way before that too. So I wrote, because I write before I speak. I heard somebody say one time, God called me to write, but he's pushing me to speak. And I would say that's true for me too. And so I did a lot of writing this morning, and got my thoughts out. I normally will just allow the thoughts to come to me as I'm doing these Facebook Lives. And I don't want to forget some of the things that I wrote earlier. So I am going to watch my notes here too. So this weekend I took on an experiment. We know what happened on Saturday, if you live anywhere in the world, but especially if you live close to Minneapolis. It just hits especially hard when I know people and I know that community. I sang in a chorus in Minneapolis for 15 years. I felt like I was part of the singing community there, the Sweet Adelines. Our chorus is called the City of Lakes Chorus. We've been competing internationally for 15 years before COVID, and now I haven't been back since COVID. It's just hard to get back into a swing when you're out of it for a couple of years. But singing's never left. And I do miss that part of it, especially when I watch Minneapolis and I watch the singing groups. They call them the resistance singers. And what they do is teach easy songs that people can learn quickly, and then they walk through the streets singing. And Anderson Cooper just did a story about them over the weekend, I think, on CNN. So inspiring. And so I've just been thinking about a lot of things. And on Sunday, I decided, probably not really on purpose decided, but I did an experiment. And I thought, if I am one who talks a lot about dialogue, suspending previous assumptions in order to learn from each other, then I want to just take some of my own advice. Now, dialogue online is not the same as dialogue in person, for sure. But I thought I was going to try this online. So I watched a couple of pretty politically charged posts. One was from a national, international source, and it leans left. And then a couple others were more right leaning. And I thought, I'm going to see if I can actually add to these conversations by asking questions. Now, my purpose, my intention is not to incite. My purpose and intention is to ask questions for clarification. Come from a place of above the line, open, curious, committed to learning. And that's what I did. And I tell you, that day, it took up all my day, all day Sunday, because there was so much to do and so much to watch. And again, typing is not the same as talking. I understand that. Yet I write sometimes better than I talk. So I felt a little better about typing things. And this was a really interesting experiment. So as I'm thinking about it, I'll tell you more about that as we go. I have an itchy nose. Um, what I recognized was, I understand you probably already know this. This is probably like a, well, yeah, duh, Jodee. But the bots, I experienced bots for the first time. I've heard about them. I've heard about these um, people, bots that are coming into conversations to, I'm guessing they're there to incite and to get people riled up. And I answered. I found the ones that were saying something that I thought I could add to or learn from. And so I typed. But what's interesting is there's this one guy named Larry. I don't even know what his name was. I looked up his profile, and you can tell on Facebook. This was, by the way, this was all on Facebook. And you can tell on Facebook that they don't really have a profile or much of one because they're just new to the platform and don't have a lot of friends and whatever. So, but this Larry guy, there were a lot of people responding to this Larry guy, including me. And then what I learned was the people who were responding to Larry were then responding to each other. And so they were having these conversations with each other, but Larry was nowhere to be found. But it was a long post. And it took me a while to figure out that there probably isn't a Larry, that the whole point is to get people upset. And what I recognized was at least this helped me formulate my questions and my responses to some of those other people because, if you look at this, it went a long time with this Larry. And then other people would talk, and then I'd put something else in and I'd ask a question, and then that person would either respond or react. And the reactions were really fascinating because I was called every name in the book, every name I would not repeat here. Um, and it was interesting because I had to remember I was doing an experiment because my first inclination is to take it personally. And then I remembered, oh yeah, this is an experiment. I am being me. I'm being real as I know how to be. And it's not about me. It's something else I can observe. And as an experiment, it was helpful to remember that. One thing I didn't do, which maybe was not very smart, I used my real name. I didn't create a false persona. It was me. But then I go back to this is my whole platform, be real. And I could get all freaked out about, oh my gosh, now they know who I am. And okay, I'm not going to play that game. But what I did was to all offer alternative points of view to both far left and far right posts. And just to ask more questions. So my thought was always, what if there's another way to see this? What if there's another way to see this? Not to try to be right, but to stay above the line, open, curious, committed to learning. And I have no idea what it feels like to be in the midst of the pepper spray that people are experiencing in the cities, but I tell you, I had my mini version online. Oh man, it was crazy. So, well, some extreme name callers kept coming at me. They kept coming back. There were some who just hit me a couple times and then left. So there was no way to continue to follow up. But when people came back at me, I came back. I continued the dialogue and continued asking questions. Maybe they left. I don't know. Maybe they left because they thought about something in the exchange. I don't know why they did. I'd like to believe so, but maybe it was they were realizing that it wasn't fun to not be supported 100% in what they believed, because I think that's what happens online when people just get in their silos and then they go, yeah, 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 yeah. And then one person will say something different and they'll go, you're stupid, because it interrupts the flow of this process. So I will say the best thing to come out of this whole experiment, which I seriously took 4 hours maybe throughout the afternoon. The best thing to come out of it was the DMs, because there were people who actually slid into my DMs and said, "I want to talk more about this. This is not something I want to say on the post." That no, not a lot. It didn't happen a lot, but there were a couple of people I really connected with, and I kept asking questions, and they kept offering, and that was so helpful. Because when people take the time and effort to extend the conversation beyond what is easy, and I'm not even going to say comfortable, but familiar, and want to exchange a true dialogue, that's what makes it worth it for me. And maybe that's selfish on my part because I got to learn and I got to, I felt that I was really exchanging information and thoughts and feelings with some of these people. So I'm not all that no, I shouldn't say interested. I'm not that familiar with the sides of things because I've done my best to understand people who have big feelings about things. But I'm not here to be certain. That's not my thing. I've said how many times certainty kills curiosity, and because my whole um, platform, I guess, real, is to be curious, stay above the line. Um, Certain curiosity is what makes us human to me, and I don't know how good bots are at being curious. At least in my experience, it didn't feel like it because it felt more like gotcha bombs. I'm going to throw this in, say how stupid you are, and then leave, and then see everybody else fight. I'm just imagining this in real life. Like, I'm going to throw something over there, and then I'm going to walk away and watch from a distance and see how these people are fighting with each other. I'm sure that's entertaining for some. Um, but my reason for being, I'm really getting clearer about this, is to connect, is to find connections, is to find places where there is common ground. And so my impetus behind all of this was to see whether it was possible for us to go, huh, let me ponder that. Of course, people don't use that language, and I didn't feel a whole lot of love in this process. And like I said, the DMs were what was really interesting. So I'm more committed to what if than what is. And I have my opinions, I have my feelings, I have my way of seeing things. I feel a certain way. And I think back to what a friend of mine here in Fargo posted last week or the week before about how this is not a time to sit on the fence. This is a time where you got to fall off the fence on one side or the other. And I keep thinking about sides, and I keep thinking about as soon as you pick a side, you cut off all possibilities for any kind of connection. So I'm still pondering that. I do know how I feel about some of these big issues. When we talk about politics and religion, I know how I feel about them. I realize that if I want to learn anything, I can't throw a gotcha bomb back. I have to stay in my space of curiosity. And so I am grateful for those who stayed with me. And there were a couple. There's somebody local-ish. I wonder if I can go back and find this while I'm on live. No, I can't. So I can't go back and find the conversation. But there were a couple people that stayed in it and said, "Hey, thank you for this." And then somebody else said, "Hey, this is so great to see that we can actually have civil discourse in the middle of all of this stuff." So, Katrina, yes, I read The Course in Miracles. Of course, I read The Course in Miracles. And wouldn't it be great if I were just above the fray and could say this is all an illusion and nothing is real and I'm so spiritual, I don't get involved. I've read it for 20 years. I wouldn't say I've mastered it because I still feel human. And so, I wish that I were above it. I wish that I were, and I'm not always, Katrina. So, because I said earlier that my hope is connection, and there's connection with people who have studied those spiritual dialogues, yes, and we can stay in that space. I love that. I love knowing that that's a possibility. And in my real life, where people interact and ask about their families and ask about their favorite restaurants, that's not a really popular conversation. So yeah, I see it through love. Yes, I do. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, Katrina. That's the whole point with this experiment, was to see if it were possible for me to ask a question. And maybe it's ego. You're right. I'm probably, I didn't do it the best I could. And it could have been ego. Maybe this person will change his or her tune just a little bit so we can connect. Perhaps that is what I was doing. And I had a lot of ahas about that, including the whole thing about bots. The bots are there to incite, not to invite. And so that's what I really recognize as the distinction for me. Um, I think about Marianne Williamson, Katrina. She was one of the people I studied while I was, pretty deep into A Course in Miracles as a study. And she has some spicy things to say about politics. Doesn't mean that we aren't able to see things through the eyes of love, because the Course in Miracles will tell you it's either fear or love. There are two ways of looking at things, through the eyes of fear or the eyes of love. And the eyes of fear are related to ego. And the eyes of love recognize that everything is happening for a divine purpose, and my job is not necessarily to redirect it, but to understand it in a way that allows me to not get involved in it. And so I know from a psychological and an intellectual space, I do know that. And the study that's helped me a little bit more these days is A Course of Love, which now says get out of your head and get into your heart. And if we can get into that space from A Course of Love, there's more, there's less need to talk, and more opportunity to just love from a distance. And so all of it is very helpful, and it doesn't scratch my itch to connect in many cases. So yeah, Katrina, I'm telling you, that's a really good one, A Course of Love. And I've learned a lot. Someday I'll tell you more about that here. Um, I think what I want, getting back to this conversation with people online, which is, the funny thing is, you don't even know if they're really human, if they're bots. And you can love a bot, I guess. Love an AI in the way that you want to wish the best for it, but it can't reciprocate that if it's not human. I don't think. I don't think AI can do that yet. I could be wrong about that. But as I got into this space, I realized that if I'm allowing people to take my light from me, if I'm allowing them to steal my thunder, that's not the right way to say it, steal my sparkle. Don't let anyone dim your sparkle. I think that's what I was thinking of. Because that's mine. And I have enough. I can give from my overflow. And so I just need to know what I need to do, as the human I am, to keep my own cup full. Because I'm committed to giving only from my overflow so that I don't fall into resentment. I'm thinking about this morning as I was typing some of these things, and I was thinking about my mom and the way she parented me, and the things she said to me throughout her life, especially toward the end of her life. She would say, I'll get my reward in heaven. I'll get my reward in heaven. My mom was someone who never thought of herself first, ever, and she parented me that way. It's not about you, Jodee, it's about everybody else. So I was parented to give before I receive. And so in that space of giving, there were times when I wasn't filling my own cup. My mom, I don't know how she filled her own cup. She was always giving, but I sensed that there had to have been just a little bit of resentment in that, because people didn't come to her and ask her because she was so busy giving to them first. So, I think I could have done a better job of knowing my mother. I could have asked her more questions too about herself. She wasn't always, forthcoming with her own information about herself because she was so busy worrying about everybody else. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. And if that's the only way we are modeled, to give, and then not learn how to receive, that can be an imbalance. And so I want to model giving only from my overflow, which means there's no space for resentment because nobody's stealing my sparkle without me having a endless store. So what I learned, again, going back to this experiment, these people didn't know me. They didn't know me. These people or bots or whoever I was interacting with, they didn't know me. They were calling me such horrible names. I mean, just really, really horrible names. Things you would never want anybody to be called. And that's where I had to just go, oh yeah, this is not me. This is not me. This is an experiment. There's a person who looks like me and a person who looks like this other person who are having a conversation. What I recognize too is that I didn't give up on the conversation. I a lot of people will say to me, "I can't believe you stayed in that for so long." Well, because I want to know what happens on the other side of it. I want to know if someone finally says, "You're swear word, swear word, swear word, swear word." I mean, they were saying horrible things. And then what? Do I say what I realized I was doing was saying, "Thank you for sharing your perspective." And they hear that as patronizing, and they hear that as I don't know, inciting in some way. I don't know what else to say, because if I'm doing an experiment and I want their perspective on it and I want to hear how they're actually how they're seeing the world, then I guess I have to ask for it. I have to say thank you for that. So that was something I was experimenting with too. And what I want to take from this online experiment into real life is to recognize, for me, I will say for me, and you can insert your own desires here, but I love doing something nice for people. I love being kind. I get a kick out of being kind. I get something back when I'm kind. And I do all the things that Dr. Rick on the Progressive commercials tells you not to do when you're turning into your parents. I am my parents. I'm not young anymore, so I can't be the young person turning into their parents. I am the parent. And so I do those things. I ask people, what did you have? What did you just eat for dinner? How was it? Would you recommend it? I do those things because I am all about connection. And I'm sure there are people who are like, yeah, boomer, yeah, that's just, yeah, not, and that's okay. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to find somebody and say, ooh, I see you. I see who you are. I went to an event this morning in Fargo where I live, which was just delightful. And it's every Wednesday morning, and I don't go because I have a mastermind group that meets at the same time. But today I left the mastermind group early and I went to this event called what's it called? Brew. What's it called, you guys? Who I can't remember right now. Morning Brew. It used to be called A Million Cups. And it was so fun because there were people there who actually I walked in and I've been a networker forever. I knew very, very, very few people there. I've been out of that networking game for a while, and there were a lot of really young people, new faces to me, and I was one person I did know had me come up in front because I'm older. He was looking at the crowd and he goes, "Older people, come up here. I want you to sing this song with me." And he picked two of us and he wanted us to sing the theme song to Cheers. Thankfully, he had the words on his phone. And we sang the theme song to Cheers because he knew I would know the theme song to Cheers. And the point was, you want to go where everybody knows your name. And I thought that was brilliant based on what I'd done over the weekend and knowing myself that really I want to be where people see me. I want to be where everybody knows my name. I do. Because to me, that's true connection. That's not just window dressing. That's not just getting a business card so that you can see how many business cards you got. It's not just, you know, putting a check mark that you made so many contacts. I was taught to do that in sales, just make all your calls. It doesn't matter how you do it. There's no connection. It's just the transaction. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it makes sense to me now why those were never fulfilling opportunities for me. I really do want to know what makes you tick. And sometimes that can be really confronting because a lot of people haven't thought about it. And that's what I recognized in some of these conversations. I wanted to say, what got you here? What got you so angry? What got you so resentful of anything that would cause you to have to think about something? Because I was asking questions like, tell me how you got here. And people don't want to do that. Oh, you're one of those. And whatever that means. Oh, what does that mean? And it happened on both, I would say, sides of things. But what I really found interesting, again, going back to the bot thing, there are people, humans, real humans I know in my community who are of a different, a wider political persuasion than I am. I know them, they're real people. And in some cases, I would put a comment on, and then that person would never come back. Again, it would be the person who set his site up wouldn't come back to see what people said. And I don't suppose you can when you have so many hundreds of people making comments. So that's been interesting for me too, because I am not growing my social media platforms very well because I I don't know why. I haven't figured out why. I try to keep up. Thank you, Katrina, for being here and having the conversation with me. I will follow up with people. I will notice you. That's more important to me than having 8 million followers. And so I will challenge all of us as we end this session today to see people in your life, really see them. Notice what has them. Thank you, Katrina, for saying notice what gets them in their ego, which is fear. Notice what gets me in my ego, my fear. Scream at me, call me names. If you need to, do that. Get it out. And I'm going to take my wisdom and advice from Pee Wee Herman, who said, I know you are, but what am I? Ah, that's so funny. I love that. And he also said something like, I'm rubber and you're glue. What you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. But there's some truth to that, isn't there? If we don't let it affect us, if we don't let it stick to us, it's not for us. Michael Singer was such a good teacher for that. If it's not yours to own, don't own it. Jodee, I think I got better at that during this experiment. But you can count on me to see you. I'm going to see you. I see you. And I hope and pray that at whatever level you can, someday you'll see me too. And when that happens, we can have a connection that makes both of us better. And until then, I'll probably keep asking you questions. I'll probably keep wanting to know more about you. I'll want to know how you came to your perspective. I'll hope you'll ask me, but you might not. And that's okay because it's all one grand experiment anyway, right, Katrina? It's all one grand experiment. And when my days on this earth are done, I want to not have any regrets. At least if I have regrets, may they be for things I did, I tried, and not for things I didn't try because I was too afraid. So today, as always, see if you can find a way to be real. Grab one of those: radical, energized, authentic, learning, focused. Keeping in mind that radical does not mean what popular opinion has caused it to mean. It means getting back to the root, who you really know yourself to be. And then energized, authentic, be you, learning, focused. And throw a little kindness in there because that can't hurt. And if you do that, let's have a conversation about it. Reach out. Share this if there's anybody in your circle that you think might be interested in hearing more about this, and let's see if we can actually get together online or in person sometime and have a real dialogue. I would love that. See everybody. Thank you.